Because wisdom and age aren't the same thing, Jake replied. And sometimes, the oldest civilizations are the ones that have forgotten the most important lessons. The chamber erupted again. The silence that followed Jake's words felt like it. Might last forever. Then Elder Mordan spoke, his voice carrying the weight of millions of years. Young human, you misunderstand your position. This is not a negotiation. This is an evaluation. You cannot simply refuse to participate. Jake looked up at the ancient being, his expression calm. Watch me. The two words hit the chamber like a shockwave. Several alien representatives actually stood up from their seats, their various forms of movement creating a ripple effect throughout the vast space. The translation systems worked overtime as dozens of species tried to process what they had just heard. Lisa stepped forward, her voice cutting through the growing noise. For 3 years you've been studying us. You've watched our cities, recorded our conversations, analyzed our technology. You think you know everything about humanity? She pulled out her datapad and activated a holographic display that appeared above the speaking platform. Images of Earth filled the air, showing human cities, space stations, and colonies on Mars. But you've missed the most important thing about us, Lisa continued. We don't break, we don't give up, and we don't bow down to anyone just because they're older or more powerful. Counselor Thys coiled her serpentine body, her voice sharp with irritation. Your species wages war against itself. Your planet is divided into hundreds of different nations that compete for resources. How can you claim any kind of superiority over civilizations that have achieved perfect unity? Amy Rodriguez spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. Perfect unity. Is that what you call it when everyone thinks exactly the same way? We have eliminated conflict from our worlds, Counselor Thys replied. Our people live in harmony. There is no war, no poverty, no suffering, and no growth, Jake said. No progress, no dreams of becoming something better than you are today. High Counselor Vextar's crystalline form pulsed with brighter light. We have achieved peace. Young human, our civilizations have lasted for millions of years without the chaos and violence that still plagues your world. Your civilizations have lasted, Jake agreed. But have they lived? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jake could see alien representatives turning to look at each other, some with expressions he couldn't read, but that felt important. Lisa activated another display on her datapad. This time, the hologram showed charts and graphs filled with numbers and data. We've been doing our own research during the past 3 years, she said. Would you like to know what we discovered about your perfect, peaceful civilizations? Several council members leaned forward, their curiosity overcoming their irritation. In the last 1,000 years, your council has added exactly 7 new member species to your organization, Lisa continued. 7 species in 1,000 years. Do you know how many major scientific breakthroughs have come from council civilizations during that same period? She paused, letting the question settle over the chamber. 12. 12 minor improvements to technologies you already had. No revolutionary discoveries, no paradigm shifts, no leaps forward into unknown territory. Elder Mordan's ancient voice carried a defensive tone. We have achieved stability. Our people have everything they need. Your people have everything they're allowed to want, Amy said. There's a difference. Counselor Thys raised her head, her predatory instincts clearly aroused. You dare to criticize civilizations that have eliminated the primitive behaviors your species still wallows in? We're not criticizing, Jake replied. We're pointing out what you've lost in exchange for your perfect peace. He gestured toward the vast chamber around them, filled with thousands of alien beings from dozens of worlds. Look around you. Really look. When was the last time anyone in this chamber proposed something truly new? When was the last time someone suggested exploring beyond the boundaries of what you already know? The chamber buzzed with alien voices, but Jake could hear uncertainty in the sounds. Even through the translation barriers, doubt was beginning to creep into the conversation. Our boundaries are vast, High Counselor Vextar said. We control thousands of star systems. Our knowledge spans millions of years of accumulated wisdom. And yet you invited us here? Lisa said quietly. A young, violent, chaotic species that doesn't fit any of your models for civilized behavior. Why? The question hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several council members actually recoiled, their various forms of movement creating visible ripples through the assembled crowd. Because you're curious about us, Jake continued. Because we represent something you haven't seen in so long that you'd almost forgotten it existed. Amy activated her own data pad, and new images appeared in the holographic display. These showed human colonies on hostile worlds, research stations in dangerous asteroid fields, and exploration ships heading toward unknown star systems. This is what you've been studying, Amy said. Humans who chose to live on Mars even though it's trying, to kill them every day. Scientists who work for decades on problems that might not have solutions. Explorers who head into space without knowing what they'll find. This is reckless behavior, Elder Mordan protested. Unnecessary risk-taking that leads to suffering and death. This is life, Jake replied. Real life. Not the safe, controlled existence you've created for yourselves. Counselor Thiss's voice turned threatening. Our safe, controlled existence has brought peace to thousands of worlds. We have ended war, eliminated poverty, and created societies where every being can live in contentment. Contentment, Jake repeated. Not happiness, not excitement, not the thrill of discovering something new or the satisfaction of overcoming an impossible challenge. Just contentment. Lisa pulled up another set of data on her pad. We've analyzed your entertainment, your art, your literature. Do you know what we found? She didn't wait for an answer. Nothing new in the past 500 years. Your artists create variations on themes that were established centuries ago. Your writers tell stories that follow patterns set down by ancient traditions. Your musicians play songs that would be familiar to your ancestors from 1,000,000 years past. Tradition and stability are virtues, High Counselor Vextar said, but his crystalline form had dimmed noticeably. Tradition without growth is death, Amy replied. You've become so afraid of conflict and change that you've stopped living. The chamber erupted in angry alien voices. Representatives from dozens of species shouted protests in languages that created a cacophony of sound. But Jake noticed something important. Not all of them were protesting. Some were just sitting quietly, thinking about what they had heard. Elder Morden raised his branch-like arms for silence. When the chamber quieted, his voice carried a note Jake hadn't heard before. Even if your observations contain some truth, what you suggest is dangerous. Conflict leads to suffering. Competition leads to war. Growth often comes at the cost of peace. And peace without growth leads to death, Jake said. Maybe not physical death, but something worse. The death of hope. The death of dreams. The death of the desire to become something greater than you are. He looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien gazes as he could. You've all forgotten what it feels like to want something you don't have. To dream about a future that's different from your present. To take risks because the potential reward is worth the danger. Lisa stepped closer to the microphone. You think our wars and conflicts make us primitive, but those same conflicts have driven us to achieve things we never thought possible. Every challenge we've faced has made us stronger, smarter, more capable. Your wars have also caused immense suffering, Counselor Thiss pointed out. Yes, Jake agreed. They have, and that suffering taught us to value peace when we achieve it, but we never forgot that some things are worth fighting for. Amy activated a new display showing human technological development over the past century. The progression was rapid and dramatic, unlike anything the Council had seen from its member species. This is what growth looks like, Amy said. This is what happens when a species refuses to settle for what it already has. This is what happens when a species is willing to say no, Jake added, his voice growing stronger. No to limitations. No to being told what's impossible. No to accepting that things have to stay the way they've always been. High Counselor Vexitar's form flickered with uncertain light. Your philosophy is appealing in theory, but it ignores the costs. How many of your people have died in your wars? How much suffering have your conflicts caused? Too much, Jake admitted. But that suffering gave those sacrifices meaning. Our people died fighting for something they believed in, not wasting away in perfect, meaningless comfort. And now we're here, Lisa said, standing before the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, refusing to beg for your approval because that's what our sacrifices taught us to do. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it felt different. The silence wasn't filled with confusion or anger. It was filled with something Jake recognized but hadn't expected to find here. It was filled with possibility. For the first time, in who knew how long, the Galactic Council was being forced to consider that maybe their way wasn't the... A new voice echoed through the chamber, one that hadn't spoken before. It came from a section filled with beings that looked like they were made of flowing water, held together by some invisible force. I am Counselor Zephyr of the Aquatic Federation, the voice said through the translation system, creating musical tones that seemed to ripple through the air. You speak of growth and dreams, young humans, but you offer criticism without solutions. What could your primitive species possibly teach civilizations that have existed since before your star was born? Jake smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. The expression seemed to catch several alien representatives off guard, as if they hadn't expected him to look pleased by the challenge. Everything you've forgotten how to be, he said simply. Amy stepped forward and activated her data pad again. The holographic displays around the chamber suddenly came alive without permission from the council. Images and data streams filled the air above the assembly, showing information that the aliens hadn't authorized. This is illegal access to our systems, High Counselor Vextar protested, his crystalline form flashing with alarmed light patterns. So is keeping us here against our will if we choose to leave, Lisa replied calmly. But that's not the point. Look at what we're showing you. The unauthorized displays showed a series of images that made several alien representatives lean forward in their seats. Human cities rebuilding after earthquakes and hurricanes. Scientists working through the night to solve diseases that had killed millions. Engineers designing spacecraft that pushed the boundaries of what should have been possible with their limited technology. You see disaster and chaos, Jake said, gesturing toward the images. We see opportunity and challenge. One display showed a human colony on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. The colonists were working in conditions that would kill them in minutes without their protective gear, drilling through miles of ice to reach the ocean below. This colony has no strategic value, Amy explained. No rare minerals, no military advantage, no economic benefit. The people living there will probably never see a profit from their work. Elder Mordon's ancient voice carried confusion. Then why do they persist in such a dangerous endeavor? Because the ocean under that ice might contain life, Lisa answered. And the possibility of discovering something new, something that has never been seen before, is worth any risk. Another display showed human artists creating sculptures from the wreckage of destroyed buildings, painters using colors made from the dust of distant planets, musicians composing symphonies that incorporated the sounds of solar wind and cosmic radiation. Your people create beauty from destruction, Counselor Zephyr observed, her musical voice carrying a note of surprise. We create beauty from everything, Jake replied. Destruction, construction, success, failure, hope, despair. We take whatever life gives us and try to make something meaningful from it. The displays shifted to show human children in schools across Earth and the colonies. But these weren't the orderly, controlled educational facilities that existed on Council worlds. These classrooms were chaotic, filled with students asking questions, arguing with teachers, and working on projects that had no predetermined outcomes. "Your educational systems appear inefficient," noted a representative from the Kellyan Empire. "Why do you allow such disorder in the development of young minds?" "Because disorder breeds creativity," Amy answered. "Those children arguing with their teachers are learning to think for themselves. They're developing the ability to question authority, to challenge established ideas, to imagine possibilities that don't exist yet." Elder Mordan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Such behavior would be considered disruptive in our societies." "And that's exactly the problem," Jake said. "You've eliminated disruption, but disruption is how progress happens. Every great breakthrough in human history started with someone who was willing to disrupt the established order." Lisa activated another series of displays that showed human space exploration efforts. Unlike the sleek, efficient vessels of the Council species, human ships looked rough and improvised. They were built from whatever materials were available, designed by engineers who had to solve problems on the fly. "Your technology is crude," High Counselor Vextar observed. "Why do you not wait until you can build proper vessels?" "Because waiting means not going," Lisa replied. "We'd rather go now with imperfect technology than wait forever for perfect conditions." One display showed a human research station orbiting a dangerous pulsar, collecting data on radiation levels that could kill the crew if their shielding failed. Another showed explorers mapping an asteroid field where one wrong move could destroy their ship. "This is reckless endangerment of life," Counselor Thiss said, her predatory instincts clearly disturbed by what she was seeing. "This is life," Jake countered. "Real life, with real risks and real rewards. Your people have become so afraid of death that they've forgotten how to live." Amy brought up data showing the psychological profiles of Council species populations. The numbers were stark and troubling. Depression rates, suicide rates, and what humans would call existential emptiness were surprisingly high among supposedly perfect civilizations. "Your people are dying inside," Amy said bluntly. "They have everything they could possibly want, but they've lost the ability to want anything new." Counselor Zephyr's musical voice carried a tremor. "Our populations are stable and content. Your populations are stable and dying," Lisa corrected. "Look at your birth rates. Look at your innovation indices. Look at the number of young people in your societies who express any interest in exploring beyond their predetermined roles." The data was damning. Council civilizations had achieved perfect stability by essentially stopping all forward motion. Their populations were aging, their cultures were stagnating, and their young people were increasingly choosing not to reproduce. "We have achieved what your species can only dream of," Elder Mordan said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Peace, prosperity, and harmony." "You've achieved death by another name," Jake replied. "You've created societies so perfect that there's no reason for anyone to live in them." The chamber buzzed with alien voices, but Jake could hear something new in the sounds. Doubt, fear, and underneath it all, something that might have been hope. High Counselor Vexitar's crystalline form flickered with unstable light patterns. "Even if your observations contain truth, what you propose is dangerous. Chaos and conflict lead to suffering. And suffering leads to growth," Jake said. "Not all suffering is meaningful, but meaningful life requires the possibility of suffering. When you eliminate all risk, all challenge, all possibility of failure, you also eliminate all possibility of genuine achievement." Lisa stepped closer to the microphone, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "You invited us here because you're dying. Your civilizations are slowly suffocating under the weight of their own perfection. You need something to shake. You awake, to remind you what it feels like to be alive." Amy activated one final display that showed something the aliens hadn't expected. It was a simple video of human children playing in a park on Earth. They were laughing, running, falling down, getting back up, and trying again. Their joy was obvious and infectious. When was the last time you saw this kind of spontaneous happiness in your own populations? Amy asked. The question hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several council members actually recoiled from the display, as if the sight of genuine joy was somehow painful to witness. "This is what you've lost," Jake said softly. "This is what your perfect peace has cost you, the ability to feel real joy, real excitement, real hope for the future." Counselor Thys coiled her serpentine body tighter. "Our people are happy." "Your people are medicated," Lisa replied, showing data about the vast pharmaceutical industries that kept council populations in states of artificial contentment. Elder Mordaunt raised his branch-like arms and the chamber fell silent. When he spoke, his ancient voice carried a weight that made everyone listen. "Young humans, you paint a troubling picture of our civilizations, but you offer only criticism. If you reject our offer of membership, if you refuse to learn from our wisdom, what do you propose instead?" Jake looked around the chamber one final time, seeing thousands of alien faces staring down at him. Some looked angry, some confused, some curious. But all of them looked like beings who had been sleepwalking through their lives and were just beginning to wake up. "We propose something better than membership," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. The chamber held its breath, waiting for his answer. "We propose partnership." The word hung in the air like a challenge that no one in the chamber had expected. Partnership, not membership, with all its implications of joining something already established, not alliance, with its temporary political convenience. Partnership meant equality, mutual respect, and shared growth towards something neither side could achieve alone. High Counselor Vextar's crystalline form went completely dark for several seconds before blazing with unstable light. Partnership? With a species we were evaluating for basic membership? "You were never evaluating us," Lisa said, her voice cutting through the confused murmur that filled the chamber. "You were trying to convince yourselves that we were just another species you could absorb into your collective and forget about." Amy stepped forward, her military bearing more obvious than ever. "But we're not just another species. We're the reminder of everything you used to be before you chose safety over greatness." Jake moved to the center of the speaking platform, his voice calm but carrying clearly to every corner of the vast chamber. "We're offering you a chance to remember what it feels like to grow again, to face real challenges, to push boundaries, to become more than you are today." Elder Mordaunt's ancient voice trembled as he spoke. "You propose that civilizations millions of years old should learn from a species that has barely left its home world?" "Age doesn't equal wisdom," Jake replied. "Sometimes the oldest civilizations are the ones that have forgotten the most important truths." Counselor Thys coiled her predatory form, her voice sharp with disbelief. "And if we refuse your partnership? What then?" Jake's answer was simple and devastating. "Then you'll watch from your perfect, peaceful, dying worlds as humanity reaches for the stars and becomes everything you once dreamed of being." The chamber erupted in chaos. Alien voices filled the air in dozens of languages as representatives shouted protests, questions, and demands. But Jake noticed something important happening. Not all of the council members were protesting. Some were leaning forward in their seats, their various forms of body language suggesting intense interest rather than outrage. Counselor Zephyr's musical voice cut through the noise. "Wait." Her single word somehow carried over all the other sounds, and the chamber gradually fell quiet. "Human Jake Morrison, if we were to consider this partnership you propose, what would be your first suggestion?" Jake paused at the edge of the speaking platform, looking back at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. He could see the moment of decision approaching, the point where everything would either change or remain the same forever. "Simple," he said. "We teach you how to dream again. and you help us make those dreams reality. High Counselor Vextar's form flickered with rapid light patterns. Teach us to dream. We are ancient beings with wisdom spanning millions of years. And when was the last time any of you imagined something that didn't already exist? Lisa asked. When was the last time? Someone in this chamber proposed exploring beyond the boundaries of what you already know. The silence that followed was answer enough. Amy activated her datapad one final time, but instead of showing more evidence of Council's stagnation, she displayed something different. Images of human children drawing pictures of impossible creatures. Engineers sketching designs for ships that defied known physics. Artists creating works that had never been seen before. This is what we're offering, Amy said. The ability to imagine things that don't exist yet. The courage to try things that might not work. The willingness to fail in pursuit of something greater. Elder Morden shifted in his seat, his tree-like form creaking with age and uncertainty. Such pursuits lead to chaos, to conflict, to suffering. Such pursuits lead to life, Jake countered. Real life, with all its messy complications and wonderful possibilities. He gestured toward the displays, still showing human creativity and exploration. You see our wars and call us primitive. But those same conflicts taught us to value peace when we achieve it. You see our failures and call us reckless. But those failures taught us to celebrate success when we earn it. Lisa stepped closer to the microphone, her voice growing stronger. You've created perfect societies by eliminating everything that makes life worth living. You've achieved peace by forgetting what you're supposed to be at peace for. Counselor Thiss raised her serpentine head, her predatory instincts clearly disturbed by the direction of the conversation. Your philosophy is appealing in words, but the practical reality is different. How many of your people have died pursuing these dreams of yours? Too many, Jake admitted without hesitation. But they died trying to become something greater. They died with purpose, with meaning, with the knowledge that their sacrifices might help their children reach higher than they ever could. Amy pulled up data showing human space exploration casualties alongside breakthrough discoveries. The numbers were sobering, but they told a story of constant forward progress driven by the willingness to take meaningful risks. Every person we lost taught us something new, Amy said. Every failure showed us a better way. Every setback made us stronger and more determined. And now we're here, Lisa added, standing before the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, offering you something you haven't had in centuries. What exactly are you offering? High Counselor Vextar asked, his crystalline form dim with uncertainty. Jake looked around the chamber one final time, seeing thousands of alien faces that represented millions of years of accumulated knowledge and wisdom. But he also saw the emptiness behind their eyes, the slow death of societies that had achieved everything they thought they wanted. We're offering you a future that's different from your past, he said. A chance to grow again instead of just existing. A reason to wake up tomorrow that's better than the reason you woke up today. The chamber fell completely silent. Jake could see alien representatives turning to look at each other, some with expressions of fear, others with something that might have been hope. Elder Morden spoke first, his ancient voice carrying a note no one had heard before. And if we accept this partnership, what would change? Everything, Lisa replied simply. Your young people would have something to dream about again. Your scientists would have new problems to solve. Your artists would have new emotions to explore. Your civilizations would remember what it means to be alive, Amy added. Counselor Zephyr's musical voice rippled through the chamber. This is a fundamental change to everything we have built over millions of years. Yes, Jake agreed. It is. It's dangerous, Counselor Thiss pointed out. Yes, Jake said again. The best things usually are. High Counselor Vextar's crystalline form began to pulse with a steady, bright light. This partnership you propose would require us to abandon the stability we have achieved. It would require you to trade stagnation for growth, Jake corrected. Comfortable death for uncomfortable life. Perfect emptiness for imperfect meaning. Their chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as alien representatives talked among themselves in their various languages. Jake could see the council was genuinely considering his proposal, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. Finally, Elder Mordan raised his branch-like arms for attention. Human delegation, we need time to consider your proposal. Take all the time you need, Jake said, turning toward the chamber's exit. We'll be out there, growing, learning, becoming. When you're ready to join us in reaching for something greater than perfect contentment, you know where to find us. As the three humans walked toward the massive doors, something unexpected happened. Individual alien representatives began leaving their seats, following them toward the exit. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds of beings who hadn't moved from their assigned positions in years. Jake, Lisa whispered, look behind us. He turned to see a stream of alien representatives flowing down from the chamber's tiers, their various forms of communication creating an excited buzz that the translation systems could barely handle. I think it worked, Amy said quietly. One word, Jake replied, watching as more and more council members abandoned their seats to follow the humans. One word that offered them equality instead of subordination, growth instead of stagnation, partnership instead of membership. Behind them, the Galactic Council that had remained unchanged for millions of years was experiencing its first real disruption in longer than anyone could remember. Representatives were arguing, debating, and most importantly, imagining possibilities. They hadn't considered in centuries. The age of perfect, peaceful, dying stagnation was ending. The age of messy, dangerous, wonderful growth was about to begin, and it all started because humanity had the courage to say no to being less than they could be, and the wisdom to offer something better in return. The single word, partnership, had done more than destroy the Council's confidence in their way of life. It had given them hope for a different kind of future, one where ancient wisdom and youthful energy could combine to reach for dreams that neither could achieve alone. He walked out of the chamber without another word, leaving 12 alien delegates staring at the credentials of a species that had just declared war on the established order of the Gala General Thaxmore of the Zephyrian Fleet, stood before the massive holographic display in the Council Military Command Center, his scaled fingers tapping against the metal railing as he reviewed the intelligence reports. The data streams showed everything the Council knew about human military capabilities, and frankly, it was not impressive. 57 ships, he said to his assembled staff officers. Their entire space fleet consists of 57 vessels, most of which are converted civilian craft. Their largest warship carries fewer than 400 crew members and relies on chemical propulsion for primary thrust. Commander Zelthara, a young Valderan officer whose crystalline body reflected the display lights, chimed softly. Sir, their weapons systems appear to be kinetic-based projectile weapons with some basic energy systems. Nothing approaching our plasma cannon technology or quantum torpedoes. Thaxmore nodded, pulling up detailed scans of human ships captured by long-range sensors. The vessels looked crude compared to the elegant curves and smooth surfaces of Council warships. Human ships were all angles and exposed machinery, covered in what appeared to be patches and repairs. They looked like they had been built in someone's garage rather than proper shipyards. Look at this, Thaxmore said, highlighting one of the human vessels. External fuel tanks, exposed weapon mounts, armor that appears to be welded steel plates. These are not warships. They are industrial accidents waiting to happen. The intelligence reports painted a picture of a species that had stumbled into space through determination rather than sophistication. Human faster-than-light technology. Worked, but barely. Their ships frequently broke down and required constant maintenance. Their crews were small because their life support systems could not handle larger populations efficiently. "What about their tactical doctrine?" asked Lieutenant Krikstar, a Kretak officer whose compound eyes reflected multiple images of the display. "That is perhaps the most concerning aspect," Thaxmore admitted. "We have very little intelligence on human combat tactics because they have never fought a proper space battle. Their only conflicts have been minor skirmishes with pirates and some internal disputes during their colonial expansion." Commander Zelthara shifted, her crystal structure creating new patterns of light. "Sir, perhaps their inexperience works in our favor. Species that have never faced real military opposition often collapse quickly when confronted with superior force." Thaxmore had to agree. The Council had fought dozens of wars over the centuries, perfecting their battle techniques and developing advanced strategies. Human military thinking was primitive by comparison, still focused on the surface warfare that had dominated their home planet. The report showed human training exercises that followed predictable patterns. Their ships moved in formation, followed, established tactical doctrine, and relied on coordinated attacks against fixed positions. It was exactly the kind of military thinking that Council forces had been designed to counter. "Their largest tactical weakness," Thaxmore continued, "appears to be their dependence on centralized command structures. Disable their flagship and the rest of their fleet loses coordination. Standard Council battle doctrine should be more than sufficient to handle them." Meanwhile, on Earth, President Lisa Carter stood at the window of her office overlooking the sprawling complex of the United Nations Emergency Assembly. Representatives from every nation had gathered within hours of receiving news about the failed negotiations. The mood in the building was tense but determined. "Madam President," said her chief of staff, "the emergency session is ready to begin." Carter nodded and made her way to the assembly hall. The massive chamber was packed with delegates, military advisors, and senior government officials. Every seat was filled, and the air hummed with quiet conversations in dozens of languages. When she entered, the room fell silent. She walked to the podium without notes, her steps echoing in the stillness. For a moment, she looked out at the faces staring back at her. Representatives of nearly 200 nations, all waiting for her to explain how humanity had just declared independence from the most powerful military force in the galaxy. 3 days ago," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "our negotiator was offered a choice. We could accept a position as servants in their galactic order, or we could face the consequences of independence. Today, I stand before you to tell you what those consequences mean." She gestured, and the main display showed images of Council warships, their sleek forms dwarfing human vessels in comparison. "They have thousands of ships. We have 57. They have weapons that can destroy planets. We have weapons that can barely scratch their armor. By every measure of military power, we should surrender immediately." A murmur ran through the assembly. Carter raised her hand for silence. But there is something they do not understand about humanity, something they could not measure in their intelligence reports or calculate in their tactical computers. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. We have survived ice ages and plagues, world wars, and natural disasters. We will survive this too. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the building itself. Carter waited for it to die down before continuing. "I will not lie to you. The coming conflict will test us in ways we have never been tested. Some of our people will not come home. Some of our cities may burn. But when it is over, humanity will still be free. In the orbital shipyards above Earth, Admiral Ryan Brooks walked through the corridors of the UES Constitution, humanity's newest and largest warship. The ship was still under construction, with work crews crawling over every surface installing weapons, armor, and systems that had been rushed through development in the past year. Colonel Sam Mitchell, the architect of humanity's military doctrine, met him at the bridge. "Admiral, We've completed the final War Games simulations. The results are not encouraging. Brooks nodded grimly. Show me. They moved to the tactical center, where massive displays showed the results of computer simulations running every possible scenario for the coming conflict. In 93% of the projections, human forces were completely destroyed within the first 48 hours of fighting. The problem is fundamental, Mitchell explained. Their ships are faster, better armed, and more heavily protected than ours. In a straight fight, we lose. Then we do not fight them straight, Brooks replied. Mitchell pulled up new tactical displays. We've been working on that assumption. Look at these scenarios. The new simulations showed human fleets scattering rather than forming battle lines, using asteroid fields and planetary gravity wells as weapons, and coordinating attacks through encrypted quantum communication networks that the Council could not intercept. Hit-and-run tactics, guerrilla warfare in space using our knowledge of local space to our advantage, Mitchell continued. We cannot match their technology, but we can make them fight on our terms instead of theirs. Brooks studied the projections. The success rates improved dramatically, though they were still far from guaranteed. What about our secret weapons projects? Dr. Nathan Price's artificial intelligence systems are online and operational. Commander Elena Rodriguez has her special operations teams ready for deployment. Captain Danny Foster's civilian fleet conversion program has turned every cargo ship and mining vessel in human space into a potential warship. And our ace in the hole? Mitchell smiled grimly. The Council fights by rules, Admiral. Rules of engagement, honor codes, established tactical doctrine. They fight wars like gentlemen settling disputes. And we fight wars like humans. Exactly. We fight to win, and we do not care if it looks pretty while we do it. Back on the Council station, High Chancellor Vextar received reports of human military preparations with growing amusement. Intelligence updates showed frantic activity throughout human space, with ships being retrofitted and weapons being manufactured at unprecedented rates. They are preparing for war, reported his intelligence chief, a tall, thin being from the Nexari species. Every human facility appears to be working at maximum capacity. Of course they are, Vextar replied. It is natural for primitive species to struggle against inevitable defeat. How long do our military analysts estimate it will take to pacify human resistance? General Thaxamore believes that a demonstration of superior force will be sufficient. One decisive battle should convince them to surrender. Vextar nodded approvingly. Excellent. Authorize the general to assemble a task force. Something impressive but not excessive. We want to end this quickly without wasting resources on unnecessary destruction. What neither Vexitar nor his intelligence chiefs understood was that human preparations were not following any pattern in their databases. While Council species prepared for war by building more of the same weapons and ships they had always used, humans were preparing by reinventing warfare itself. In research facilities across Earth and its colonies, scientists and engineers worked around the clock developing new technologies specifically designed to counter Council advantages. Dr. Angela Foster's team had found ways to disrupt alien shield systems using modified mining equipment. The vote, when it finally came, was not unanimous. Several species wanted to continue the war, believing that Council superiority would eventually prevail. But the majority recognized reality. Humanity had proven that continued conflict would destroy both sides, and the only rational choice was negotiation. The message that went out to Admiral Brooks was simple and direct. The Galactic Council formally requests a ceasefire and new negotiations with the United Earth Federation. Brooks received the transmission while reviewing casualty reports from the latest series of raids. Humanity had lost nearly 40% of its original fleet, with thousands of crew members dead or missing. The cost of independence had been higher than anyone had wanted to pay, but they had won. The response he sent back was broadcast across the galaxy, carried by every communication network. Captain Rick Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the massive Council Military Academy on Proxima Tertius grow larger on his tactical display. The planet was supposed to be untouchable, protected by layers of defense systems, and located deep in the heart of Council space, where no enemy had ever dared to venture. Today, humanity was about to change that. "All ships report ready for assault," Lieutenant Sarah Kim announced from her position at the communications console. "The stealth systems are holding. Council sensors show no indication they've detected our approach." Martinez nodded grimly. His squadron of 12 ships had spent 3 weeks traveling through Council territory, using every trick Dr. Nathan Price's artificial intelligence systems could devise to avoid detection. They had posed as merchant vessels, hidden in the shadows, of gas giants, and even disguised themselves as space debris when necessary. The mission was strategically pointless, but psychologically devastating. The Council Military Academy trained the officer corps for every member species. Attacking it would send a message that nowhere in Council space was safe from human retaliation. "Remember," Martinez told his crew, "we're not here to cause unnecessary casualties. Hit the training facilities, the command centers, and the communication arrays. Avoid the dormitories and civilian areas. We want them to remember this day, not mourn their dead children." The attack began exactly at midnight local time. Human ships emerged from the darkness like vengeful ghosts, their weapons already charged, and their targets selected. The Academy's defense systems, designed to repel conventional attacks from known threats, were completely unprepared for the coordinated assault that followed. Within minutes, the pride of Council military education was burning. Training simulators exploded in cascades of sparks and flame. Command centers collapsed as human missiles found their targets with surgical precision. The communication towers that connected the Academy to the rest of the Council military network toppled like falling trees. "Primary objectives complete," reported Captain Lisa Reynolds from the escort ship Resolute. "Academy command structure is neutralized. They won't be training new officers here for a very long time." Martinez watched the fires spreading across the Academy complex and felt a mixture of satisfaction and regret. This was what war looked like when humans fought it. Brutal, efficient, and absolutely merciless in pursuit of victory. "All ships, begin withdrawal. We've made our point." News of the Academy raid reached the Council chambers within hours, carried by emergency transmissions that painted a picture of catastrophic failure. The humans had struck at the very heart of Council military power, proving that their reach extended far beyond what anyone had believed possible. High Chancellor Vextar received the reports in his private office, surrounded by advisors whose faces showed the strain of a war that had spiraled far beyond their control. The political consequences were already beginning to unfold as member species demanded explanations for how primitives had managed to attack the most secure facility in Council space. "The Kretak delegation has called for an emergency session," reported his chief aide. "The Valdorans are threatening to withdraw from the military alliance. 3 minor species have already begun secret negotiations with human representatives." Vextar felt the weight of political reality crushing down on him. The war he had started to demonstrate Council supremacy had instead revealed human capabilities that no one had imagined. Every victory the humans achieved made the Council look weaker and less capable of protecting its own territory. "What does General Thaxmore recommend?" he asked wearily. "Total war. Deploy every available ship in a coordinated assault on Earth itself. Accept whatever casualties are necessary to end human resistance permanently." "And the cost?" His aide consulted the military projections. "Conservative estimates suggest we would lose between 60 and 80% of our combined fleet. Possibly more if humans have developed additional capabilities we haven't discovered yet." Vextar stared out the window at the stars beyond. The Council station. Somewhere out there, human ships were probably planning their next impossible attack. The species he had dismissed as barbarians had proven to be the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. On Earth, President Lisa Carter convened an emergency meeting of her war cabinet as reports flowed in from across human space. The success of the Academy raid had been followed by a wave of smaller attacks that were crippling Council operations throughout their territory. The psychological impact is beyond our most optimistic projections, reported Dr. Angela Foster. Council member species are beginning to question whether continued resistance is worth the cost. Our intelligence sources indicate significant political instability within their alliance. Admiral Ryan Brooks pulled up tactical displays showing the current disposition of Council forces. They're massing a huge fleet near the Vega system. Preliminary counts suggest over 200 ships, including some vessel types we've never seen before. If they're willing to sacrifice everything, they could still overwhelm our defenses. What are our chances? Carter asked bluntly. We've fought. Beyond all reasonable expectations, Brooks replied. But we cannot match the combined resources of 12 species indefinitely. If they commit everything to one final assault, we might not survive it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had achieved the impossible by defeating every Council force sent against them, but the mathematics of total war still favored the side with greater numbers and resources. General Patricia Stone, who had replaced the previous Joint Chiefs, chairman after his death in a Council raid, cleared her throat. Madam President, there is one more option we haven't discussed, which is, we could offer them a way out, make it clear that ending this war is in their best interest, not just ours. Carter raised an eyebrow. Explain. Stone activated a new display showing human military capabilities that had been kept secret until now. We've been holding back some of our most advanced weapons systems, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. If we demonstrate that continued war will be far more costly than they imagine, we might convince them to negotiate. The display showed projects that pushed the boundaries of human technology and imagination. Weapons systems that could destroy entire fleets, defensive technologies that made human ships nearly invulnerable, and strategic capabilities that would allow humanity to strike anywhere in the galaxy with devastating effect. These are our ace cards, Stone continued. Once we play them, there's no going back. But if the alternative is total war that might destroy both sides, perhaps it's time to show the Council exactly what human determination looks like when we're fighting for our survival. 3 days later, the massive Council fleet assembled near. Vega received an unexpected message. It came not from Earth's government, but directly from Admiral Brooks aboard the Constitution, now stationed boldly in what had been considered secure Council territory. To the commanders of the Galactic Council fleet, the message began, the United Earth Federation offers you one final opportunity to end this conflict through negotiation rather than mutual destruction. The transmission included detailed scans of human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Ships that the Council had never detected suddenly appeared on their sensors, positioned in locations that made it clear humanity could strike at every major Council world simultaneously. You have seen what we can accomplish when fighting for our independence, Brooks continued. You have not yet seen what we will do when fighting for our survival. We offer you the choice: negotiate as equals or discover the true meaning of human warfare. High Chancellor Vextar received the message while standing in the Council chambers, surrounded by delegates whose confidence had been shattered by months of impossible human victories. The scans showed human capabilities that exceeded their worst nightmares, weapons that could turn the war into a galactic catastrophe that would leave no winners. They're bluffing, insisted the Kretak representative, though his clicking mandibles betrayed his uncertainty. Are they? Asked the Valderan delegate. They have been bluffing about everything else, haven't they? Their primitive technology, their limited numbers, their inability to project power beyond their home system? The Nexari representative spoke, for the first time in hours, his multiple eyes focusing on different displays simultaneously. The humans have demonstrated capabilities we never imagined. If they say they can destroy our core worlds, do we dare assume they cannot?